Are we ready?
I am ready. So this is day 8.
Day 8, yeah.
And anything we should be talking about before we go for it?
No, I think I am able now to differentiate what you meant by speaking into a recorder and then hearing it play back. And I think that's what I mean by initiating and not initiating. Like, I'm hearing it rather than producing it.
And are you going to have examples in this series of beeps that are going to show that?
Yes, and I'm going to be using words like hearing instead of saying, or like it's passive instead of like active.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Well, when that happens, we will no doubt want to clarify those words, because this exercise is fundamentally not about the words; it's about the experience. And so I guess, as you probably know by now, we're pretty picky about trying to make sure we understand what people are saying. And it's almost never about saying, well, I'm going to use this word, and then we accept that because we think, rightly or wrongly, that words are elastic and they have a range of convenience, and we have to figure out exactly what that range of convenience is. And so when we get there, then we'll have to explore.
Okay. Beep 1.
Number 1.
I was looking at something. It said, oh, hold on, let me read this. All right, I was looking at, like, I forgot what it was. It was on my phone and it said 10%, and I was directing my eyes at that. But it wasn't like present to me at the moment. So my eyes were directed at it, but it wasn't part of my experience. And I was saying the words and the. I don't remember what I was talking about or what I was even going to say. It was interrupted by the beep. And I was hearing the words, not saying them.
And the words were and the, T-H-E, the?
Yeah. And I don't remember what it was about or what I was even planning on saying, but it was more of like a distracting thing taking me away from reading 10% or whatever I was looking at.
Okay. And so when you say that you were saying this, I'm understanding that the primary experience is of hearing it. Is that right?
Yeah.
And you could say that you're saying it because it's in your voice. Do you hear your voice?
Yeah, it's my voice, but I have referred to it as like chatter or quieter. I said that, like, if I'm reading, this pulls me away from what I'm reading and distracts me. That's a similar experience.
Okay. And now we're using the term hearing, and I don't want us to use the term hearing and just assume that we know what we're talking about. So when we're having this conversation that the three of us are having right now, some of the time you're speaking and some of the time you're hearing. Like right now, I presume that you would say, I'm hearing Robert talk to me.
Yes, for sure.
Is that what you mean by hearing in this beep? When I hear my voice say and it's the same kind of a...
Yeah, it's not like an active process. Like, I'm not actively trying to say it. It's just like coming in the background. Like, I was reading, I'm sure I said 10% in my head when I was reading that. But then and the popped in, pulled me away from the whatever I was looking at, and I was hearing it, not saying it.
Okay. So I like to make sure that I know what I'm talking about here. So here I understand hearing as a phenomenon that I recognize as I go through the world, and sometimes I hear things. So I hear a car going down the street, or I hear a thunderclap, or I hear somebody talking to me, or I hear the pencil fall on the table. Or those I would call auditory experiences, hearing experiences, and they all seem sort of in the same class to me. They seem like more or less the same thing, different sources. Thunder is different from cars, different from pen dropping and whatever. But phenomenologically, they seem like the same kind of thing. That's what I want to know, whether this hearing is like the hearing of a car going by or a thunderclap or whatever, except that it's inner. And the distinction that I want to make sure that I'm clear about is it's possible for words to be present in my imagination that are neither heard nor spoken, but yet I know that the words are there somehow. The words present themselves to me, but they don't present themselves to me in an auditory way. They present themselves nor in a speaking way. They present themselves in some other way.
Well, it's not like an external hearing. Like, it's not like I'm hearing a car drive by, because I know that's like not part of like what's going on in my head. So it's not like a sound, if that's what you're asking. It could be neither of those explanations, but I can't wrap my head around it being similar to a sound of a car driving by.
Okay.
So I'm pretty confident it's not like that.
Okay. So when I say if I drop my pen, I could say, well, I heard that fall, and it was a clacky kind of a sound, and it was quite short. The sound was a initial loud sound, and then it was followed shortly by a softer sound. I could describe the auditory characteristics of that event.
It just sounds like my voice.
And that is exactly the question. Does it sound like your voice?
Yeah, it sounds like the one that I use for actively trying to initiate self-speech, except it's just chatter. It's like in the background, but it still sounds like the same thing. And by sound, like, it's not like it's my thought voice. It's not like what I'm hearing when I'm speaking out loud right now. I know it's my thought voice. I know there's words attached to it. It's not exactly the same sound.
And does the voice of the saying of does it? So I would describe your voice that I hear as being a bass or baritone.
No, I can't describe the sound of it. So like I can't. So like when I'm saying out loud right now, or when I listen back to these recordings, I don't hear that when I'm thinking. It doesn't sound like that. But it is unique to me, and I just know it's my thought voice. That's what I've just always considered it.
Okay. And so is it fair to say then that you have a thought voice that doesn't have speaking characteristics? I don't feel like I'm speaking it, but also doesn't have hearing characteristics. I don't hear the baritone. I don't hear the accent. I don't hear the whatever. Is that true?
I guess maybe, yeah. Maybe I'm contributing just knowing that I'm saying words to a sound when it's not that phenomenon.
That's exactly what we're trying to figure out. And that's a tough deal. I mean, nobody's ever asked you to differentiate that stuff before. So it's a skill that we've got to figure out how to master.
Yeah, there's no sound to it. It's just words that are flowing.
And including no imaginary sound.
Yes, including, yeah.
Okay.
And Ryan, you sound kind of confident about that. Do you mean to sound confident, or is this sort of like I'm exploring this possibility and I'm leaning toward it, but I'm not?
No, I'm confident. I just thought that was the norm, or that's just what self-speech is supposed to sound like, or be experienced like. If that makes sense. Like, it's still words. I could like rush it and like say things faster and slower. I don't think I could like yell or change the pitch or anything. It's just words.
So am I understanding this sort of long interchange, right? That we're thinking maybe there are words and they seem like Ryan is saying them, but they don't have sound. They don't have auditory qualities like when Ryan speaks aloud. Is that
correct? Do people actually hear sounds of their voice?
Yes, some people
I
do.
think so, yeah.
So for example, you've had some visual imagery. Let's change where you have seen things clearly in your head.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember a good example of it. Well, I guess the doctor on the knee, that wasn't a particularly clear. Can anybody remember a clear example of
the parking lot that I was walking out of?
Yeah, the parking lot. So I think you could say that experience was entirely in my imagination. I was not, and there was no real parking lot out there, and yet it had the characteristics of seeing. I could see the car, I could see the color, I could see the whatever. And so when I used the word see in the external world, I could use the same terminology. The same terminology makes sense to describe this experience. It's got color, it's got expand, it's got borders, it's got whatever it is that seeing has. I can say, well, either it does or it doesn't have that in my imagination.
Yeah. I definitely see.
Right. So now the question is, well, we have this word here. Here, in the external world, we've got the characteristics of what hearing is. And the question is whether those same kinds of things apply to and the. And I'm understanding that the answer to that question is mostly no. There's some characteristics that overlap, maybe like speed or rhythm or something like that. But the auditory characteristics like nasalness or not, or basic bassness or baritoneness or whatever, it doesn't have that characteristic.
Okay, so this might be fascinating to you or might be helpful, but when I was younger, I had a speech impediment and I couldn't say R, and my inner voice, or when I was saying words in my head, I could say, like I didn't have a speech impediment.
So that's one of the many areas that I would very much like to explore. I have never sampled with people who have seriously speech impediments ongoing, and I think that would be totally interesting. Mm-hmm. And the difficult. So we've been talking now for 12 minutes and 49 seconds according to my timer, and we've been talking about basically one little tiny phenomenon. It's taken this long to take a step forwards in this. Mm-hmm. Because it's not easy. It's we if we really want to understand each other, we've got to take this kind of care. And I don't think there are very many other people on the planet, at least the Western planet, who are taking that kind of care.
I agree.
And so I don't think we know much about the phenomenon of inner speaking in people who have speech impediments or who had speech impediments.
Stutter.
Yeah, it would be totally interesting to know the answer to that, and quite useful, I think, probably in some way. I don't know that I know exactly how it could be useful.
I agree.
But the way if we look at what this conversation started out by Ryan saying, well, I know what the deal is. It was inner hearing. Now, 12 and a half minutes later, we have said, well, it's not really inner hearing. And that is, I want to emphasize, this is not a criticism of Ryan in the slightest. This is the way this process has to go. And I'm pointing it out now because it is a fundamental importance to the science of inner experience, it seems to be, because you just can't believe a guy like Ryan, even though Ryan is clearly a motivated guy and clearly an honest guy and clearly trying to do the best he can. He's just not in a position to be able to answer to give a good description. And that is not a failure of Ryan's. It is the human condition because words have to be differentiated, and they have to be differentiated in action and opportunity and whatever. And that requires this, what we call the iterative process. So this, to my way of looking, this is a beautiful example of why it is that what we're doing is interesting, and also why it's difficult, and also why it's not impossible.
Okay.
Because I think we are making progress here.
I agree, and I have a lot more questions about certain aspects of your research that I hope to ask eventually, but I want to finish this whole thing so I'm not like skewed.
Okay, so now I'm finished with the phenomena, but except in one aspect, and that is and the a standalone thing, like I am experiencing and that's it, or am I experiencing some longer thing of which and the is a piece, but I've forgotten what the rest of it is.
It's like almost as if I was dreaming and then the alarm goes off and it wakes you and it cuts the dream and it stops. So like I was saying the words were passively being said and then it beeped and then it just pulled me out of it. So it was like a daydream in words.
So you're
completely cut it off.
So your sense it is, and I want to make sure I understand it. Your sense is it's not the case that out of the blue came the words and the. Instead, there was some kind of a stream of words that I wasn't really much paying attention to, and the beep happened to catch me and pull me out of where I was at the and the.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I can't say this for fact, but it was probably going to lead to like a full sentence of some sort, but it snapped me out of it. And so It didn't happen.
Okay. Then I think I'm good.
Me too. Number 2.
And I want to reiterate because it may seem like I've been sort of critical, which is not the case. I think we're doing great, and you're doing great.
I don't feel as though you're being critical. You're just being diligent, and that's what you should be doing.
All right.
All right. I was watching a video on YouTube, and a guy was referencing something that happened earlier in the video, and it like triggered a memory of what happened earlier in the video, and I got a visual of the house that he was talking about. He was referring to a house, and I got a visual of the house in the exact same vantage point as I saw earlier in the video. It was very vivid. I could tell it was night. There were people like harboring the front door, kind of. I saw a view of the front of the house. I was pulled away from the video in this daydream, so like I wasn't listening to what he was saying anymore. And I heard the words, as in passively, I heard the words he said that triggered my memory of what the house looked like. So I was like repeating what he was saying about the house, and I said what he said, which I didn't for some reason didn't write that down. I don't know why. That triggered my memory, and then those words were attached to the house that was like bringing me back to remind me, I guess.
Okay. So is the primary portion of your experience the visualization?
It was very vivid. I know that, but I was also saying the words, so I can't ever tell if it's like one thing that's happening at the same time or two different things that are like overlapping. So I don't know. They were both happening, and I was both aware of both that were happening at the same time.
Okay.
Or like part of each other.
Could I ask you to start with the words and do the hearing of the words first?
That's fine. So there are words present. You didn't write down what they are. Is that right?
Yeah, I wish I did.
Okay. But are we confident words are present, or I didn't write them down because I forgot, or I don't know if they were there?
I was repeating what he said for some reason. I didn't try to do it. It wasn't something that was a goal of mine. I repeated the exact sentence that he was saying and was seeing the house at the same time.
Okay.
And
so he said something on the video, and now in your imagination, you are saying that same something. Is that right?
Yep.
And how are these words experienced?
So I think I've heard two different versions of that. I'd like to make sure I got it right. So are you repeating the words yourself, or are you hearing him say the words again?
I'm not hearing him say it. It's my voice. It's the same exact voice from the first one.
Okay, good.
That's like my daydream voice. It's quieter, pulls me away from the situation. I'm not actively trying to say it. And it was my same voice that I mean, we've learned that I don't have a voice, but it's that same process.
Mm-hmm. So it's me saying it, I guess. So in the last one, we said that it's you saying it, but it doesn't have. It's not like you hear sound.
Yeah, it's just the words that are in a row.
And how does this one compare to that?
It's the same thing.
So again, the words are there. Are they clearly apprehended? They're clear to you?
Oh yeah. And that's what pulls me away. Like sometimes I could like, if like I'm trying to read and really focus, I could like suppress that chatter and like really focus. But this one like actually like, pull me out of it.
And does it make sense to call this a speaking? Like, does it seem like I'm saying it? Does it?
Yeah.
Even though there's no vocal.
It always seems like I'm saying it. It's
And
almost like my thoughts are verbal, like they come out as words instead of unsymbolized sometimes, or instead of visual, they just come out as words, and it's very distracting.
Mm-hmm. So it seems like I'm saying it.
So I'm a little worried about that word saying there. Can I ask a question about that too?
Yeah.
So let's accept for a possibility that words can happen without being said and without being heard. That it is possible to have the experience of a row of words in a row, I guess is what you said a bit ago. And what I'm worried about is that, well, if words in a row, then I must be saying it. I don't want us to fall into that trap. So when I say things, I somehow have a experience of myself as the speaker.
That's when I say initiating, that definition right there.
So these words in a row don't have any feeling of being produced.
It's like speaking on autopilot, kind of. Like I have no direction or goals, or I'm not trying to say it, but the words are coming out in fluent sentences.
But not voiced.
Not voiced, I guess, according to what we discovered. But it represents speech. Like it's clearly speech. Like it's.
And why do you say that it's clearly speech? I'm not disbelieving it.
Just because the flow that they come out is just like similar to how someone would talk.
So it has the rhythmic sequence of speech?
Yeah, and it kind of feels like it would be sentences I would say, even though I'm not actually actively trying to produce the words.
Sorry, Alec.
No, that's fine. I am still trying to understand that. It seems to me like every different angle you say, it still sounds like you're trying to convey, no, they're coming out of me like a saying, even though this isn't like an initiated speech, even though there isn't a voice. You know, you're saying things like they're coming out, it's like speech, so I want to get that. I don't want to hold you to the words.
Yeah.
I understand that this might just be an experience that kind of, evades language, which would be fine and great. But I'm just trying to get, like, is it just I experience there are words present?
So it happens all the time to me. So like I could just, when it happens, I could try to focus on that and write it down and then email it to you. But right now I can't. Like it's obviously something that I don't try to do, and it just comes out. So like I will try to focus on that going forward to see if I hear anything
So I'm not sure I think that's a good idea. I think we should just be patient about that. And if this is an important phenomenon for us, we're going to get beeped at it, because the the advantage of the beep is that it defines a moment. Whereas if you set out, I'm going to go looking for one of these examples, and that sort of puts you in a different frame of mind.
Okay.
So I would say relax about that. But this example has a seeing component. And what you're seeing is not what your eyeballs are aimed at. It's what your eyeballs used to be aimed at a while ago. But
Yes.
now you're seeing something that's in your imagination.
Yes, I think it would be something that some people call photographic memory, but it's not like looking at a picture, but it's definitely very detailed. And
it seems like the same house they showed me before.
It was like I could have drawn like the pictures to whatever that was there previously, and you could like go back and look and it would match.
And do I see the house, or do I see like my computer screen and the YouTube window and the house?
I see just the house. It's not like through a screen or anything.
Even though in reality it was.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I'm seeing that, and at the same time, there are words present. These are words that I've created, even though the guy had just said them, and I'm recreating them.
Mm-hmm.
We're not totally clear on how, but they're in
my inner voice.
They're in a sentence. They're in order. They seem to have
cadence,
like a rhythm, a cadence. Okay. But this is also, well, this is a question. Is there a voice? And totally fine if the answer is, oh, I don't know. I'm gonna.
Like when he was describing like hearing like the baritone in my voice and like the nasalness, that does not exist. But it's there. It's definitely something.
So this is a good example of our process here, because there's an imaginary seeing going on, and you've got absolutely no doubt about that. You'd bet the ranch on that. It sounds like this is what I'm seeing. It was nighttime. I see the house. I don't see the YouTube frame or whatever. All of those things sound like you'd bet 1,000 to 1 or 1,000,000 to 1 or whatever, and that those being the characteristics of your inner experience. And yet so there's nothing about the inner experience which leads you to be not sure about it. But there's something about the speaky, wordy, whatever that we don't that doesn't share that confidence.
Yeah, it's just hard to explain.
Right.
Has no one explained it like I have been explaining it to you before?
Well, we've had lots of people who have trouble putting into words phenomenon that don't easily get put into words, and so I think that's sort of where we are here. And we have people who describe the presence of words without speaking or hearing. We call it words present usually, but your phenomenon, and what I think we're worrying through here, trying to figure out, is whether your phenomenon is basically I got words with cadence, and that's it. But it seems to Ryan, well, if I got words with cadence, it must be spoken, and therefore I'm going to talk about this as being speaking. Or whether there is some kind of a characteristic of speaking, even though it doesn't have a voice to it. I have a speaking cadence. And so it's not just words, it's spoken words, even though it's not spoken with a voice. It's maybe we're creating the words but haven't articulated the voice to it or something. And I don't think I know the answer to that. I'm not sure you know the answer to that. And so we're trying to figure it out.
This is fun.
It is.
It is, because it is a matter of trying to differentiate language which you have never tried to differentiate before. And we have never tried to differentiate before. and that's pretty much the epitome of the human challenge, as it seems to me. And it is an interesting game, interesting exercise.
It's almost like I am daydreaming in words, and it's really frustrating, obviously, if I'm trying to focus on something. And it happens less if I take Adderall. So it's definitely associated with my focus, that phenomenon.
So I would encourage us to bracket the causation implication in that as well, because it could very well be that the words are the result of the failure of concentration rather than the cause of it.
Yeah, makes sense.
And I'm not saying that that's what I think. I'm just saying, well, let's wait and see. Maybe we'll discover something about that. But let's just not presume that the causation goes in one direction.
All right.
Shall we go on to number 3?
Yeah.
This one is pretty easy. I was reading a text that said, "You're moving further at least." It was internal monologue as I define it. I was saying it. I was actively saying this one. And it wasn't like hearing. It wasn't like a daydream. I was reading this and saying it.
And when you say you're saying it, does this have a voice quality to it? I'm saying this in my baritone noise.
No, it's not like I don't hear the tone of my voice. Like there's no tone to it, but they are words being said, almost monotone kind of, but it still follows the rhythm of the speed that I was reading at. So saying every single word that I was reading.
And so by monotone, do you mean you're moving further at least? Or something like that?
I'm saying it in my head. Yeah, it's not really a sound. Maybe it's like a whisper. I don't know. It's not like I don't hear my voice.
So even in the inner monologue initiated speech, you don't have it doesn't seem like it's a voice thing.
It sounds the same, or it's the same experience as the other one, except the other one is just less controlled, not controlled. It's just free flowing. What's wrong with me, Doc?
Well, I think it's interesting. So on this beep, 8.3 here, am I understanding that you're saying that I am speaking, but I don't actually experience a voice while I'm doing the speaking? I'm innerly speaking, and there's no question about that. I've initiated it.
It's a voice, but I don't know if I could actually say that there's sound to it that I could like differentiate.
So let's set the sound aside because we already decided that's a hard topic for us. But are there vocal characteristics to it?
Yeah, like I feel like I'm saying it, but I'm just saying it in my head instead of out loud.
Okay.
I'm as I'm talking now, it's the same thing, except it doesn't sound the same. Feels the same, doesn't sound the same.
Okay. And what distinguishes this one from the previous one is that the previous one doesn't feel the same.
Yeah, this one is more of like the center of my focus, where the other one pulled me away from this thing I was trying to focus on.
Okay. All right, then I think I'm good.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
Okay, cover your ears. I got a swear coming. I read a post on Facebook that said, "Fuck you, ... feed me," in quotations, like it's a quote, dash, Ralph the cat. Like it's like a quote. And it was odd that it was my 8th grade history teacher that was posting it. That wasn't present at the time, irrelevant at the time, but And then I scanned down to a picture of the cat that he was talking about in the post, that was like getting near his food. And I was passively saying, just like the first two, or just exactly like beep 2, I repeated what I read, fuck you, feed me, in my head. And that took me out of the current focus of the cat. The cat was irrelevant at the time. It was kind of like a quick little daydream that happened.
So by the cat, okay, so of all that, what exactly is, in your experience, caught by the beep?
Me passively saying, fuck you, feed me.
Okay, so it's the words.
Yeah.
Okay. So my eyes are aimed at this picture of the cat, but I'm not even into that anymore.
Yeah, so I read it, said it actively when I was reading it, scanned down, and then when I was about to look, I looked at the cat, and then it pulled me out of the situation of looking at the cat, and I repeated what he said.
Mm. And the time it's repeated, am I understanding right? It does not seem initiated. It seems like a passive, daydreamy chatter thing.
Yeah. I did this experiment at night, so all my medication was worn off, so my brain was much more active than it usually is.
Mm. And so how exactly do you experience the fuck you, feed me?
I like when scientists swear. It's the same exact thing as the second beat, where like I was repeating what he said for no reason at all. Like I didn't need to do that. I don't know why I did it. I didn't have to do it. I had no control.
So I'm not initiating these.
Mm-mm.
Or this. And how about here? Is this spoken?
If I want to say it feels spoken, but then I don't want you to confuse the active and the passive, like me actually trying to do it and not. It feels spoken, but I'm not controlling the speaking.
Okay.
Like it feels like I. Yeah.
And when you say it feels spoken, do you mean that like phenomenologically, like I have the sense or whatever that this feels like a spoken kind of thing? Or do you just mean these are words in a sentence that is like something I might say aloud, so therefore it seems like a spoken kind of thing?
It feels spoken.
But not initiated spoken, like somebody else is controlling it, but it's me.
Yeah, like I didn't want to say it. Like I didn't have to. There's served me zero purpose to say it. And I don't know why I did it, but that's what happened.
And are there any vocal qualities here? Like we've said in the past, maybe there was some rhythm, cadence characteristics.
Just how I would say it out loud. Same speed, no sound. Obviously, we determined that. But it's my thought voice. I'm going to start calling it that. It's easier.
And the thought voice seems to have a rate of speech.
Yeah, for sure. So it feels like speech.
Does it make sense to further describe the rate here? Like, am I saying, is this coming out fast, or are the words fast? Are they slow?
I don't think it's important. Like the actual experience of it.
Okay. So how does this differ from the one right? How does this differ from number 3?
3, I'm trying to say it's like the goal. Like I'm putting in. I have a direction and a destination. Where those don't have a destination. They do what they want.
But are they otherwise the same? So one I'm the initiator. This other one, they're just.
Sometimes they could occur at the same time. So like I could be reading and then also have the passive one going on in the background.
So let's not do the passive. Let's not do sometimes. Let's stick with 8.4 and 8.3.
All right, what do you want to know about those?
So aside from the initiation aspect, at 8.3, I am the initiator of the words. No doubt about it. 8.4, I don't have control over these, they're just happening.
Yep.
Are the words otherwise experienced in the same way? Like this no voiced but kind of seems like speaking kind of thing?
So it was similar in, I used the word intensity before. It was similar to intensity there, but it's usually not. I told me not to talk about usually, but that time it was similar in intensity to the number 3. 3 was definitely more of like a louder, more focused on word.
Mm. So what does intensity mean? What?
Like it's more part of the footlights of my imagination instead of like me focusing on other things and multitasking. It's like the one thing that I'm doing.
Okay.
Multiple things could be occurring at the same time.
Okay.
As in 4 multiple things could be occurring at the same time with that intensity. Where you like 3 is 90, 100%, or 4 at that time it was like 70, but
okay.
It's not always like that.
So I'm more into focused on the words in 8.3 than I am in 8.4? Or did I not get that?
No, it was, yeah, so 4 is mostly what I'm focusing on. I'm focusing on the speech, but it was still like the passive version.
Mm. So is that 90-70 difference, does that mostly refer to the passivity versus initiation-ness of it? No?
No.
Okay. So it's not how prominent it is. It's not how driven by me it is, but there's still some difference between these two.
Just one feels like I have a destination at the end of what I'm trying to do, and the other one has no destination.
Mm.
It's like one I'm sitting in the front seat of the car driving, and the other one I'm in the back seat, and I'm just along for the ride.
Okay. Mm.
And the intensity is tough to explain, but
yeah. Well, maybe future samples will help clarify that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But at 8.4, I'm gathering it's just these words. Like the history teacher is not part of my experience. The picture of the cat, that all has passed, and I'm into the words.
Mm-hmm.
And we're doing our best to describe that. Okay.
Yeah, I guess a good way to describe intensity is the amount that it pulls me away from like the external reality that I'm supposed to be like focusing on or dealing with.
Hmm. And which one
more
of
intense it is, like intensity can also be related to the visual. Like sometimes it's super intense, super visual. It pulls me completely away. It's almost like I'm there.
Mm-hmm.
Where other times it's just like quick, it could be undifferentiated, and it's not like super intense.
And between 8.3 and 8.4, which one pulls you away from the world more?
So 3 is almost I'm interacting with the outside world, where 4 is more so internal, like more pulling me away from the outside.
Okay.
Are we making progress, or are we hitting roadblocks?
Well, I think with this kind of stuff, part of the progress is really hitting all the roadblocks. So you can say that you've, held all the balls in the air and considered everything. And this is a lot of newness for one day. Like this word speech stuff we're seeing today, I think will really, it's going to clarify some stuff if we can keep doing this and stay on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with that. But I've got one more question here, and I may have been distracted by the workman in my house a little bit ago. But so, did we just conclude that number 4 has distracted me or taken me away from the world more than number 3?
Yeah, it's almost like 3, I am interacting with the outside. Like I'm reading what's in front of me. Like I'm taking a piece of paper and I'm reading it. Where like I'm actively involved with what's going on. But the other one's more like spacey and like I'm in my head.
So it seems to me that back in the day, some number of days ago, or maybe it was even earlier today, we had said that one of the characteristics of this passive speech is that it pulls you away from the world. But here we've got an example of passive speech that doesn't pull you away from the world as much as active speech that pulls you away from the world. So the pulling away from the world is apparently not a constitutive characteristic of the passive speech.
I think I just understand today more than I did in the past.
Yeah. Well, I think that's probably right.
If we went back to the earlier beeps, I think I would be significantly better at explaining things. Like I looked back at the first beep where I was editing the video, and I thought that the video would be better if I said something, or if I had like a wild thought. Do you remember? Juicy is the word I use.
Yeah.
Right.
That was unsymbolized thinking, and like I know for a fact that was because from just doing this over and over again, and I had such trouble explaining that, but now like I know exactly what that was.
And I don't doubt that that's true. I would recommend that we bracket that kind of speculation because
I would like to count how many times we
You
have.
knew it was
radical-
coming.
I'm a radical bracketer.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan, how are these passive speech things different than unsymbolized thinking?
Unsymbolized thinking just happens like that, and like there's just so much information, and then I would elaborate with speech to describe those thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Or like I would have just a huge, I could probably think of an entire plot to a book and just like that, but I would have to like attach words to it, and that would take time to organize.
Mm-hmm.
And
So the unsymbolized thoughts don't come with words. You've got to attach words after the fact to say what that all was. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm understanding, whereas here there really are explicit words. You know, it's quote unquote, even though they're not.
It takes time.
Spoken.
Like, it follows the same direction of time as my speech out loud would.
Okay. I'm good for number 4 then.
Me too. Number 5.
I was playing the guitar and I was using a pick that I made out of folding paper, so it felt weird in my hand. And it beeped when I was looking down at my strumming hand, and simultaneously I could feel the pick slipping out of my grip. And I wasn't really hearing what was being played at that time. But I knew I was falling off beat because my attention was more focused on like me feeling the pick slip out of my hands than it was on like the rhythm.
So at the particular moment, there are 2 things going on. One is I see the picking stroke, and the other is I feel the pick slip.
Yeah. So, I can't remember right now, like which was, if they were both present at the same time, or if I was feeling it more than I was like looking at it. But I know for a fact I was definitely like feeling it slip out of my hand, and I could like, and I knew like I had to like fix it or address it.
Okay. And so tell me what this experience of the pick slipping is.
Just like I could just like feel it slipping through my hand, like I had to like keep squeezing tighter, because like if I held it like loosely in my hand, it would have fell out of my hand. So I was like squeezing tighter and like trying to like focus on not dropping it.
So that's the distinction that I would like us to be as clear as we can. So do I feel the pick sliding, or am I into holding it tighter so it doesn't slide? Or both, or neither?
I mean, I know, like, I'm aware that it's slipping, and like I was thinking about the fact that it was slipping. Kind of like an unsymbolized thought where there's no like visual or words attached to it. I just knew that it was slipping and I needed to address the situation. Therefore, I reacted by squeezing harder.
And is the squeezing harder in your experience, or is that after the beep thing, or?
That was after the beep. Yeah, that was after the beep. I wasn't like squeeze tighter. It was just like a reaction to
Okay.
what was happening.
So I feel the paper pick slipping.
Yeah.
And now I would like to know whether this is a tactile sensation, I feel it, or am I thinking a thoughty kind of a deal where, oh, my pick is slipping, I got to do something about it, even though that's unsymbolized.
It was. Can you explain that a little bit differently?
The difference that I'm trying to get at is whether I feel what's happening in my fingers. That's a sensation in my fingers with the pick.
Yeah.
Or am I thinking about it, which I guess would be a cognitive activity that would be aimed at my fingers.
It was both. Because like it pulled me away from focusing on the beat or the rhythm of the song. So like I was no longer focused on like the sound that I was producing, and I was focusing on addressing what I was feeling in my hand.
So the addressing portion is present at the moment of the beat, as opposed to just this slippy feeling portion.
Yeah, like I knew that something had to be done, but there was no words or like I didn't say I gotta fix this. I didn't do that. I just fixed it. I could physically feel it slipping out of my hand, and I was conscious of it sliding. Like.
So that much, I physically feel it, and I'm conscious of it sliding. That sounds to me like a sensation in my fingers, kind of a deal.
Yeah. But then, how would I know to react and fix it?
Well, let's assume that that's possible. That you're a skilled enough guitar player that you know what happens when this kind of sensation. Well, then I got to do it, but I don't have to think about it. Or you could be thinking about it. I mean, I'm not trying to discourage our having a thought about it. I just don't want us to fall into the trap of saying, well, because I felt the slipping, and the fact of the world is that if I don't do something about it, it's going to fall out of my fingers. Then I must have thought about it. That's the part that I don't want us to automatically do. If there's an experience of thinking about it, then let's go for it. But
there was. I knew that. I knew that it was something that I was focusing on fixing what the problem. Like I knew that I needed to fix the problem.
So it's not just a slippy feeling. It's a slippy feeling and problem solving.
Yes.
Thinking kind of a thing.
Yes, and that problem solving made me no longer focus on the rhythm. Like I wasn't even thinking about it, or it pulled me away from that, and I was thinking about my pick. I was hyper focused on my pick.
All right, then I think I'm good. And so let me review and make sure that we're in agreement about this. What I've got is that there are really sort of two aspects of my experience related at the same thing. One is a fingery thing where I feel a slippy in my fingers. Mm-hmm. And the other is a more analytical, conceptual problem solving thing that sooner or later I got to do something about this.
Yep.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And I'm good.
Okay, me too. Number 6.
6. I was about to respond to a comment someone like posted about internal monologues, like on one of my posts, and someone said about how people can't live without internal monologues because they would be brain dead. And I was thinking about that comment and passively said, actually, that's not true.
Sorry, I missed it. Did you say passively or actively?
Passively.
Passively.
That's not true. Like I wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get there, Dr. Hurlbert. Don't worry.
That's not true.
I'm happy as a clam.
Okay. So the words that's not true are there.
Yep.
How about the comment? Is that still present to you at the moment of the beep?
Well, it was yes, but it wasn't like I wasn't looking at it or reading it. The actually that's not true was like just like a response to it. Like so it was a thing that God, I'm talking myself into a corner. Yeah, I just knew that it was something that I was going to address.
Okay. So I'm responding to the comment, but I guess, well, let's just start there. Okay, let's go to those words. Are the words "that's not true" or "actually that's not true"?
Actually, that's not true.
Okay. And how are these words experienced?
My thought voice, I didn't try to say it. There's no destination. It just flowed out. Almost like my brain was starting the sentence for me without like me actually having to actively think about how to start it off.
So this is another of the non-initiated, I'm in the back seat here, totally passive.
Yeah.
Is this also a non-voiced, like I think we've understood the others as? Like it's not like I hear my voice with tone and volume and...
No, maybe not tone, but it's got the feeling of speech.
Okay. Which I understood was also there for beep 3 and 4. They felt like speech. Is that right?
And 4. Yes.
Okay.
Is there any way that these are different from 3 and 4?
It is similar to. Well, I'm trying. It's not that it's not similar to the other ones, but it's like. So like, 3. I was reading it, so that was different. 4, I was repeating what I already read, where this is like a new thought, but it just like flowed out. So yeah. So it's the similar experience to 1, the voice in 2, and 4.
Okay.
Same characteristics.
Okay. Does this one have any cadence or speed that's...
Yeah, it's almost like it's like, actually, that's not true. Like, have you ever seen like science videos where they're like super giddy and they're like, well, maybe if you pour this and that. It was like similar to that, but I couldn't like hear the voice, but it felt like that.
So by that little imitation you did there, there's like some intonation and there's a little pause, like, well, or actually, that's not true.
Actually, that's not true. As you could tell, I'm not good at impressions, probably because I don't actually hear my voice. I just found out.
So am I gathering right that I don't hear any voice, but this voice is being kind of, it has some, I don't know what to label that intonation, but I think I get what you're describing.
Yep.
Okay. Cool.
It's a voice with vocal characteristics, but those vocal characteristics are not imaginarily heard.
That's why it's so hard to explain. It's like, Yeah, it's not my voice, but it is strangely like a voice that is mine.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same throughout my entire life. Like it didn't change when my voice changed through puberty. It's just always been my thought voice.
And so we said it's not imaginarily heard. Would it also be accurate to say it's not imaginarily spoken?
See, that's
or does
like
that just get too complicated?
yeah.
I mean,
Because
I understand you're not initiating it. I get that.
no, it feels spoken. It feels,
Okay.
but it's almost like there's someone driving my brain, and like I'm not in control of that.
So spoken, but not by me, but it is my voice.
Yeah, and it feels like I'm speaking, but it's not something that I'm trying to do.
Spoken by me, but not under my control.
Yeah.
Yes. Do I have schizophrenia?
No, you don't.
What do I have?
Well, we haven't figured that out yet. But
Yeah.
Do you have like
Interesting.
an inkling? Like, are you like hovering around ideas that you're testing out with how you're asking questions? Yeah, you are. I can tell.
In terms of this. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna ask. You mean like in terms of like some group you must belong to because of this?
No, like, are you just like trying to narrow in your hypothesis on what's happening, so you're phrasing questions in a certain way to test your hypothesis?
I have no hypothesis about this. I am just trying to wrap my head around it, and I don't think I'm there yet either. I don't think I really understand this today, but I think we're getting a little closer, and it's helpful to say, well, this is kind of like this, and then I think, well, I almost thought I got that one, so it's a work in progress. But
I'm gonna be thinking about this for the next day or two, trying to like focus on it.
And I would say I'm agreeing with Alec. I don't have any hypothesis about this. I for sure am not in the diagnostic mode, but it's much more than that for me. And I think I'm going to be saying the same thing that Alec was saying, and that is, it's interesting enough in its own right just to try to get at what Ryan experience is like. And not to put him in a category with George or Sally or schizophrenia or ADHD or whatever. That's not very interesting to me. For whatever reason, it's not very interesting to me. What's interesting to me is to try to make sure that Ryan and Alec and Russ can refine the conversation in a way that it's believable that I and Alec and Ryan have a shared understanding of what Ryan's experience is like, as best we can do. And that there's nothing behind that. That's that, as far as I can see, is what it is what you get. And maybe in the long run people will say, well, who cares? And maybe even I would say that in the long run, but at the moment, it seems like that's the basic human science thing. That's the way it seems to me.
How many active participants do you have right now doing this?
At this particular moment, in terms of actually sampling, you're the guy. You're the only one at the moment, I think. Is that right, Alec?
Yeah, we've just wrapped up with a handful of people in the last couple weeks, but I think this is it that I'm a part of.
Mm-hmm. We generally don't do more than a couple at a time because it's pretty hard work. It's
diligent.
It's a lot to keep straight. I find when we have 5, 6, 10, whatever, which we have sometimes had a lot going, and it's hard to have enough mental energy to home in on one person.
Are you like the creator of DES? Like, are you the original person that thought about this and is doing it in the world right now? Are you the only one?
The answer to the first question, am I the creator? That's easy to answer, yes. The second question is a little bit harder to answer. The group that we are a part of, I would say, is the only group that is trying to do it in the same way as we try to do it. There are other people who say they're trying to do versions of DES.
So how many people are currently trained under your guidelines or your what's the word I'm thinking of, standards of?
Yeah, that's a hard question for me to answer as well. We don't do a certification thing for good or bad reasons. I'm not exactly sure which of those is the case, but so far it's a matter of from my or our point of view, it's a matter of let's see how good a job we can do this, and let's not worry so much about the real world trappings of it. Whether that's, can we can we scale it, can we diagnose with it, whatever. Let's just see whether we can do it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out if I should start calling it the Hurlburt method, and I think I'm going to.
Well, I think it's more than that, but I think there's a group of us who are trying to figure it out.
Would you trust Alec to do it alone without your guidance?
Alec is very good at it. And you could ask her whether she should trust me to do it alone without her guidance. And the answer would be pretty close to the same kind of a thing, I think.
That's good.
She's got her blind spots and I've got mine.
Mm-hmm.
Arguably, I've got maybe fewer blind spots, but I'm not even sure that that's a fair thing to say. When my blind spots come up, they're going to be pretty blind. And
You've been doing this for a while.
But I've been doing it for a lot longer than Alec.
Well, and part of the method is to do it with multiple people, so that we can point out each other's blind spots. That's huge. You can't know what you don't know, so you need other people there to say, well, that's not what I heard, or why am I not getting this? You guys seem to agree on this, and it's much better to do it in pairs or more.
Do you feel like some people understand what you're doing as a job, and some people can't comprehend what's going on? I guess, yeah, that's my question.
So is that question, do I think that some people understand what the real motivation of DES is?
Do they just understand what you're looking for and just the fact that everyone is experiencing different things, or is it a tough sell to some people?
You're asking hard questions today, Ryan.
Well,
I would say most everybody has some inkling of what we're trying to do. When we explain what we're trying to do, I think people connect with that. They say, yeah, I have an experience, and I can see why it might be hard for you to figure out how to do it. I can see why you'd have to go about it. I think that's pretty common. Whether people really understand what it requires or why you would actually care to spend so far 8 days trying to sort out Ryan's experience, I'm guessing there's a fair divergence of opinion about that.
I agree with that.
That's all I have.
All right. Well, sounds good to me. We're going to do this again. You all are going to figure out when it's going to be and let me know. And
you got it.
Sounds good.
Sounds to me. And let me, just out of an abundance of caution, I'm not the slightest bit critical of your lack of skill here. This is perfect as far as I'm concerned.
I don't feel pressured, or I don't feel like you're being too mean about it or anything. It's just you're being diligent, and that's what you should be doing. You don't want to just skip over things when it gets difficult. Then you're never gonna figure it out.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. And I'll see you
right.
when you all set it up.
All right. Bye.
Good. See you next time.